So that is, we're hoping to do that not only palay, the rice, corn, high value crops and all that, but of course in sugar. But you seem to have had a system before in place. And how was it being done? And why did it stop?
Okay, as Bob was mentioned before, we were under the office of the President. And the DA was forced to give out budget for R&D under the Pilsurin.
Who conducts the R&D?
Yung government po, but
Which agency?
SRA, Sugar Regulatory Administration. We had here in La Granja, the biggest station, I think 150 hectares, no, 200 hectares, earmarked for R&D and completed laboratory, very nice, very beautiful. Thailand was copying here. And unfortunately, they pirated all our scientists. They brought it to Thailand.
Oh, really?
So we were that good. We were that good. But then, as what happened, it no longer was under the office of the President, no more budget, wala. So, us, through our efforts, we leaned ourselves to put up an R&D, which is called Pilsurin. But of course, we can only afford so much. We're not government. We have an expansive budget. So we're just chugging along, but very slow.
But if we just talk about funding, will that solve the problem?
Oh yes, definitely. Oh yes.
Simple.
Immediately.
Yes, all right. So those are the only aspects now that we are seeing in the rest of the agricultural sector. How is your yield as compared to Thailand, for example, or all the other exporting countries? Are we very far away? And then your cost of production, and then the labor component of the cost of production as compared to others. How do we compare?
Well, we're not that far off as far as production is concerned, Thailand and the Philippines. But their cost of production is lower because they are subsidized by the government. Their electricity is very low. Government supplies them with irrigation, there's water all over their farms, and the fuel is subsidized. Fuel input, yes, they subsidize the fuel input. So we cannot compete with them. That is why every time there is an importation, everything comes from Thailand. Everything comes from Thailand. And their sugar mills, they're the biggest in the world. They can mill 25,000-30,000 tons a day. But again, since the industry in Thailand is also, the generals are involved, when they collapsed, because they did collapse, all their loans were condoned. All the sugar mills, they were condoned. So it is being protected by the government. And it's very hard to compete.
Thank you, Mr. Cuenca. And before we continue, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of our former congressman and now our future mayor of Bacolod City, Mayor Albi Benitez. And of course, we also have Congressman Paduano here with us of Abang Quad, and Congresswoman Juliet Ferrer of the 4th District. Okay, Congressman Kiko Benitez, good morning.
Okay, next, Mr. Ramos. Okay, wala na. Mr. JJ Sarosa. Ito lang talaga yung main concern natin, ha? Okay, ako naman magsasalita. Yung pinag-uusapan natin dito, baliwala yan. Kung hindi natin mapapanalo si BBM at saka si So yung first step natin muna, panaluin natin yung senador na nandito at saka yung team Uniteam ni Inday at saka ni BBM. Okay? Yes, sir. I'm sure the senators have this brilliant minded with regards to the sugar industry. Especially makatulong sila sa atin. Now we will support them because sila yung makatulong sa atin. Yung line yan, we will support them because sila yung makatulong sa atin. So, okay na yan. Tuduhan ta si Bbm-Sara. Please. Para pagbalik naman po sa Malacanang, tanan niya taga-Negros nag-support, mga planters, landowners, ga-expand kita. At ubang, hindi kita mahuyak. Kay Inday, Sara, kay BBM. Ari na tanan sa aton. We have these 28 mayors out of 31. Parating pa yung isa na 29 na. We have these 6 congressmen. 8 na congressman kasi. Hindi lang Bacolod kay Kong Albi. Half of Bacolod. Pero yung district niya sa 3rd district, solid. Inday, Sara, BBM, and Uniteam. So kanina, yung mga mayor sa taas, okay na sila. And then we have this short time lang sa inyo. So pasalamat tayo sa kay Ma'am GMA nandito. Ma'am, Madam, thank you very much. Langga kaginamot sa Negros. Tapos, Inday, Sara, best effort kami diri nga ang inyo team, unit team ni BBM, Sir, Mr. President, we will deliver. We will deliver. Okay na sa inyo, ha? With Tita Marilo also. Okay na? Wala na question? Mga senadors, hindi gid kamo malipat diri ari ni subong ang senator. Hindi ni nila maanan ang inyong request kung wala sa tulong ng mga senadors. So, unity.
Speaking of that, speaking of our senators, is there legislation you feel that you need to remedy some of these problems that you were talking about? Para alam na nila yung magiging trabaho nila.
DAR has already lapsed, but DAR continues to insist that the land retention limit shall be 3 hectares, which is not an economy of scale in any language. So we have to clarify judiciously. So that means to say, remove the several layers of problems that they are facing right now. It can be done with the DA, with a proper choice of Agriculture Secretary who understands the problems of the industry. But the most important thing for me is to clarify CARP.
If you have any other input or yes.
Just take your cue from Senator Sherwin. He's been helping the sugar industry ever since. Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Just to add, though, we actually signed a resolution, including myself, to postpone the talks on liberalization of the sugar industry. And I signed that precisely because I really feel that the problem should be focused on the inputs. Because, for example, urea, we don't have a fertilizer industry. Oil, we don't have an oil industry. So, by allowing importation, we're actually going to put a lot of pressure on the sugar industry, while the input industry is actually non-existent. So, in other words, we should really train our guns on the inputs by allowing importation of inputs, maybe looking at the tariff arrangements on inputs, so that the production of sugar will go down. So that's the reason why I signed it, because we're actually applying the wrong medicine to a problem in the sugar industry. In a nutshell.
Are there any more who would like to give their input?
Mr. Senator Bacolod.
Just to add a few cents in the discussion, Mr. President. Initially, I think the problem is there is a very weak regulatory function here of the SRA. I know that the SRA from the longest time has been doing an annual forecast of yield. They try to approximate the total yield or production of sugar. But surprisingly, they do not have a counterpart target of demand. So puro siya, tina-target nila yung supply, but they do not target the demand. And then, it seems to me there is something wrong in the way importation is being advised. Hindi tayo nagkakaroon ng advice as to why we will import. For example, today, gusto nila mag-import ng 200,000 metric tons. I think last year they imported 84,000 metric tons of sugar already. And then we have to classify sugar A, B, and C. I think sugar A is for America, B is our consumption, C is the buffer. Wala ko nakikitang buffer, Mr. President. This is where we are really lagging behind. And then, kung titingnan natin yung 28 sugar mills, I think 12 of them are in Negros, in Panay, Cebu, and Leyte, supplying about 56% of the production. Matatanda na itong mga ito, Mr. President. Kaya nga, nagsasuffer din yung production. If you compare it with Thailand, there is a wide gap between the production in Thailand. Kasi masyado ng matanda. Yung iba kasi, parang sinetap pa ni Ferdinand Magellan, Mr. President. Ganun nakatanda yun. So if you have 420,000 hectares of sugar land, dapat dedicated na to, Mr. President. Dapat wag nang gagalawin yun for any reason. Like for instance, in Israel, nakausap ko yung ambassador nila. If the land is dedicated to production, whatever happens, hindi nila papalitan yun. Kaya palagi tayong merong. So kung ang yield is, let's say, I think the recovery rate is, I think, 9%. In the 1990s up to early 2000, maganda yung production po natin, hindi ba? Medyo bumagsak na because of yung mataas na po yung inputs. So there are many things that we need to study. And I think we will be able to do that, Mr. President, under your administration. Thank you very much po.
Thank you, Senator Bacolod.
And then also I'll pass the microphone to Congressman Aldi Benitez.
Mr. President, with respect to legislation, we did pass a law already. It's called the Sugar Cane Industry Development Act. It was passed sometime 2014, and that was with all the support of the industry, which mandates the national government to appropriate a minimum of 2 billion per year. But that never happened. It was always underfunded, and for whatever reasons, it came short to the concept and the funding requirement of the industry. So if we can just really follow that law that we have passed, we worked on it, and the industry will probably get better off. No? Simple lang yan. When we were talking about funding, it was really now that we have the legislation in place. It was passed during your time, Senator Will, and we just need it to be implemented properly.
Hello. Ito. Earlier, before we started this meeting, GMA, President GMA, short talk with the planters. And then everybody agreed that there should be a consolidation among the small owners, landowners. And that I suggest that if that is a solution, one of the solutions, why don't we initiate the consolidation now, even without legislation? And we can try ayun nasa land reform pala. yung tinamaan ng land reform, ng mga small landowners, why don't we initiate the consolidation now before we tsaka doon sa mga tenants. It can be an internal arrangement among them before we proceed with the legislation on consolidation. Because okay, ma'am. So President GMA explains now to me that under the land reform law, they cannot so we really need a new legislation for that. And the Uniteam, the senatorial candidates will of course support these efforts. Pag nanalo kami, tama sabi ni Vice Gov. Thank you.
Dalawa na lang because may schedule din si Madam Vice President at saka si Mr. President. So, 2 more questions or okay na? And then sa mga senators, ready pa pahinga for the rally later? Oo. So, okay na? Yes, Mr. President. Yes, Kong Kiko of the 3rd District.
No, just to announce, sir, that we are having in the lower house a motu proprio hearing on sugar warrior number 3 and its impact to the sugar industry on Tuesday next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kong Kiko. We would like also to acknowledge Congressman Gerardo Balmayor of the 1st District.
Ito lang yung reminders ko yung sinabi ko kanina. Ito lang yung last word ko. Suportahan natin sila, yung Uniteam, because sila yung tutulong sa atin. Tutuhan ta. Okay, thank you very much sa time ninyo. Sugar leaders, sugar association leaders, sugar industry natin, ma'am. Pahinga tayo because 3:30 we have this caravan. Halin sa Silay, pangatto na sa Breadco sa rally site.